Hello and welcome to the Facing Your Fears, Turning Fear into Courage. We're going to talk about the nurtured heart approach today. The nurtured heart is something I learned from a social worker who rented space for me, this lovely woman who had been trained in how to talk to people when you come from your heart, of saying how much you care about them, when you recognize the good that they've done, when you speak in full sentences instead of good job. And it really helped me to understand that we live in a country where we want to have attorneys and judges and blame and prosecute and sue and do all these things, where there's another culture where they don't even have the word blame. They don't blame. They realize mistakes happen. They realize that we're human and we make mistakes, and they try to correct the mistakes, but they don't go after revenge, resentment, the things that we can do sometimes. Last night, I got to go to dinner with my very best friend of 40 years, and we get to tell our truth of, what we're going through. I don't think we hold back on anything. And then we can laugh about life and enjoy. We were down at the ocean. We could see the waves and the sunset and the beauty. And to have an experience where you have that kind of closeness with somebody for that amount of time and you can be yourself is such a gift. But if we start, the reason I'm bringing this up is if we start concentrating on the nurtured heart, we can have that basically with anyone when we tell our truth in a loving, positive way. So, in the nurtured heart, if you look at us as people, and I think I was saying in the last podcast that our stress level here in the United States is exactly like any of the countries who are at war because we have so much negativity being bombarded at us right now. So, the way we can get rid of this stress is to start recognizing all that's good and giving the good a lot of energy. So, I was thinking back to when I was raising my kids, and I remember when my son didn't do well in school and how upset I was. We got rid of TV for, I guess, the rest of the time they were growing up or whatever. I was pretty reactive, and yet he did amazing, wonderful things in his life. And I might have said, "Wow, good job," or something like that, but not the same kind of intensity that we as people in the United States go for the negativity and the blame and the who do we get for doing this wrong. So imagine that every time you saw your kids, your grandkids, your friends doing something that touched your heart and soul, you would say, "Wow, Peggy, when you made plans to go to dinner with me and we had so much fun, it really touched my heart and soul for days and it made me happy. And I just love being with you," or something like that. That's the kind of thing we should be saying to one another. Probably I said, "Hey, that was lots of fun," so hopefully she'll watch this podcast and know. I'll tell her anyway. We can do that with our kids. Like, oh, my daughter, my youngest, sent me this text in the middle of the night saying how much she loved and appreciated me. And I called her the next day and told her how much that meant to me and how much I appreciated that and what she meant to me. But there could have been a time where I would have just hearted it and not really said the words. We can practice this. We can practice the good. We can practice all these positive energies that we have, these loving energies that we have within us. We can practice really expressing them wherever we are. I've had people go by and say things like, "I love your smile," or something like that. It makes a difference. We can do this too. I'm thinking of my sister-in-law. She says nice things to everybody. She's so cool. And I get to go see her in a couple of weeks. That kind of energy where you recognize the greatness in everybody, that's what the nurtured heart started to do, is to say, they had a book like We Are All Oprah. How Oprah would have people on her show and she would just build them up, and they would become stars. And it was all through her energy and exposure. What if we did that for one another? We would solve the climate problems. We would solve the wars. We would solve the differences that are within our country if we could recognize just the good in others. So it's kind of a challenge. And I know I'm always saying we need to first start with ourselves, that if you and I could say, "Wow, good job. You got through the day, even though there were lots of things to get done, and you did it with a smile," or whatever you could say to yourself. at the end of the day, just think how much better you'd sleep. Maybe your dreams would be better and you would feel better about yourself. So the goal is to recognize the greatness within ourselves, within others, but to articulate it in a way that our heart and their heart feels it. I think about all the couples I work with, and they're really good at pointing out the problems, but not so great at talking about the wonderful things that have kept them together for 10, 20, 30, whatever years it might be. Couples could do a much better job recognizing how wonderful their partner is and has been. And when we do that, they only grow into their greatness. And the same with our kids and our grandkids. We want to recognize all the good things they do with full sentences, not just good job or a thank you, but thank you, sweetie. You did such a great job with your room. It makes me feel so good to see how clean the house can be, where you just really go into an explanation of why and what they did and why it feels good. So the nurtured heart, no more blame, no more anger, no more judgment, but kindness, love, forgiveness, compassion for ourselves, for others, for the world, for even the mistakes that have been made for generations that we've learned from those generations, and we have to correct the problems that we have been faced with and maybe even created on some level. But if we clear out the stuff within us, it'll clear out on the outside too. The nurtured heart. Just think of it. My heart wants to talk to your heart. Maybe my soul wants to talk to your soul. So it could be a very positive experience. So thank you. We're trying to change fear into courage. And courage is also coming out of love and expressing love in a kind, acceptable, generous way. I hope this helps, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you again.